Welcome to the 9th round of the second Indore International Grandmaster Chess Tournament 2024 being conducted at the IPS Academy here from the 9th of January. Today is the 9th, the penultimate round. Tomorrow there will be the last round. And let's look at what's happening. The games have begun and let's move to the top board one. We have Grandmaster Boris Savchenko of Russia playing against Indian International Master K. Ratnakaran. And if Ratnakaran wins this game, I think he gets his Grandmaster norm. So let's come and look. The game starts with the French defense. This opening is known as French defense, always played by Ratnakaran. He's a good expert of this opening, has been playing it for over 2 decades. And Savchenko, a strong E4 player, has been playing that for over 3 decades. So we are going to see a very interesting theoretical battle. A move A6. The normal move here is knight c6. This a6 move intends to advance the pawn without developing the queen knight. So let's see how the things go. Black has a different strategy, perhaps a bit unusual strategy on not developing the knight. And surely black has something on mind. And white goes for a direct break. So an interesting move. Taking on f5 would allow knight into d5. So let's look at pawn into pawn here, knight into pawn, and it's basically a sacrifice because black can take the pawn on e5, but black could be subject to very dangerous attack. Then knight into e5 taken, pawn into pawn, and pawn into pawn, and white has sacrificed the pawn, and white is looking for kingside attack. One course is to play queen h5 check, forcing the knight to be interposed, and then castle on the queen side, which looks like the only justification or the logical continuation to the sacrifice. White seems to be in a quite a good, white has good attacking prospects with this, and we're going to see a very fighting game here, probably a decisive game. Let's go to board 2, where International Master Nilas Shah is playing against the Grandmaster, the Belarusian Grandmaster Alexei Fedorov. Alexei Fedorov is leading the tables for 2 or 3 rounds, but now he has come to the second board. We have a system which is similar to what we could call old Indian defense. As we know, this opening is known as Indian defense, and then we have various options. This is basically old Indian defense, rarely played opening, and this move e5. This move had been played by top masters in the past. Still, Kasparov in Olympiad defeated a strong player with pawn into pawn, pawn into pawn, queen into queen check after the queen exchange. Sakhev, a strong Soviet player, was not able to defend the game, and it became a very interesting position. Now we got into a regular position. So we actually have an old Indian defense without the option of queen exchange. Black has the option of playing g6 and bishop. White is likely to play here bishop g2, and then black has the option of playing g6 and bishop g7, which leads to a normal King's Indian defense rather than the old Indian defense. So let's come to this: bishop g2, castles, h3, and queen e5. This move has recently become very popular. The earlier continuation was pawn into pawn, followed by rook e8 and queen b6. This move has become popular. Originally, it had been played quite a few decades ago, but it had lost its popularity when the results were not so good. And recently, for last 10 years, this is a popular move, and probably Nilas has not worked on this. So Nilas is thinking black has hardly taken any time, and white has already consumed more than half an hour. Let's move to board 3 now, where we're playing the top seed Grandmaster Inyan. Top seed Grandmaster Inyan is here, and then we have we go for this. As we see, we have Grandmaster Inyan playing in Gautam Krishna is another King's Indian defense, and this time it's a Samish variation popularized by the Russians, and let's see how the things turn up. So modern variation of King's Indian Samish, and black offers a pawn to gambit. Pawn would be dangerous to take the pawn, but white goes for a central pawn advance, and this I think looks like a comparatively a new move. Let's see how the game goes hereafter, and we begin the games. We'll break here for 5 minutes. Join me after 5 minutes, and we'll have some guests with us. So I see you in 5 minutes time. Don't go away. Again. So complex position has come, and we have on the third board the top seed Grandmaster Inyan playing, and we have a very interesting position. Let's move to the board 4.
Sir, in fact, I would like to tell you about board 4, and Nandita is playing extremely well this tournament, and she is about to take one IM norm because she is currently at 2449 rating.
Yes, she played in the Olympiad, and
yes, and she is
wonderful. Yes, of course. She has been playing top players. We've been seeing the commentary of Nandita and the Ame of Goa and PV Nandita, a woman grandmaster.
Yes.
This tournament has a total number of 131 participants, out of which more than 50% are FIDE title holders.
Yes.
And we have 10 grandmasters and 2 women grandmasters, out of which PV Nandita is one of them. We have 25 international masters. One of them is playing in the top board, Ratnakaran. So we have 16 countries being represented in 4 continents. We have a player from South America, this is Peru. We have a player from North America, which is USA, and we have a lot of players from Africa, Egypt, and Zimbabwe, and Zambia, and we have a lot of Asian players. We also have almost all the Asian countries. And we have a player from South Korea for the first time. South Korea participated for the first time in the Asian Games, and after Asian Games, now they made it a regular practice to play the normal tournaments. Otherwise, South Korea had not appeared anywhere. So that's how it is. And we have Ame versus Nandita, a game which takes place from the Sicilian defense, and there we have the classical variation. Nandita always plays classical variation, supposed to be very dangerous. Bishop g5, the Roger attack, e6, and white plays queen d2, and castles on the queen side, bishop e7, and long castle, and a6, and bishop into f6. The standard move here, and it's not possible to capture the bishop because after knight into knight, the d6 pawn is lost. So here, there's a common move, a standard variation. f4 is the move. White wants to go with f5 quickly. Black could transpose it to a different variation, bishop d7, but with bishop on e7 awkwardly placed, the move bishop d7 f5. doesn't give a good position. So the standard variation is to exchange the knights and start playing against the black's white's castle king. So queen f5, and we have bishop e2 and bishop d7. So black wants to put the bishop on c6, and if white plays f5, which looks like the only strategic plan, then black wants to bring the queen to e5. The players who really are the masters of this system from white are Paul Keres and late Paul Keres, Grandmaster, who really laid down the foundation of how to play from white side. So f5 and then move the queen and put the bishop to g4 or h5, put more pressure against e6 point. And today we have a great master, and this is our own Vishwanathan Anand, who has won several games with white side as well as black side in this absolute master. And bishop f3, as we suggested, we got a complex game, and let's now go to the game 4. So game 4 we have something strange, because Nguyen has
English
made a move c4, and Sahil is yet to make a move. He has not come. I think some confusion. Let's do you have any idea of what's wrong in this? Or
nothing, sir.
okay, so we'll move to board 6 then. Here we have the Perk defense, rather a modern defense, but black plays d6 and knight f6, then it becomes Perk defense. Now it's a modern defense at the moment. A very risky move by Zumaev against Shamnikal. Shamnikal, Grandmaster of Chennai, and Zumaev, Grandmaster of Tashkent, Uzbekistan, who has played in India several times. And a dangerous line for both sides. a4, I think confused reaction perhaps, because normally bishop e3 and queen d2 is played to play with f3 and castling queen side, but it's also not always advisable. So white probably wants to play knight f3, a different system. So not one of the most popular systems and powerful systems. Black could just play e5 with a roughly equal position here, or even but e5 or short castle are the moves, and I think black seems to be in a comfortable position. Black has taken a lot of time. Zumaev Marath is a very original player and has not really played prepared much. On the next board, on board 7, we have an interesting match between Ilam Parthi. Ilam Parthi is world champion in under 10 group and under 14 group, and he is playing against Kashish Jain, local challenge. So we have a Sicilian defense again here, and normal open Sicilian, where now this time another classical and another Roser, and similar to Nandida's game, a6 long castle, identical, and bishop d7. The other line, she had chosen bishop e7 and bishop d7. Here black wants to play b5 immediately. So the idea of bishop d7 is to protect the knight, so that the c6 knight is guarded, and white has two options. One is to play f4 and go normally as a classical system, and the f3 is the English attack, where white wants to strengthen the e4 point and go for g4 and h4. Bishop on g5 sometimes is awkwardly placed in English attack, and we'll have to retreat to e3, as we'll see. Okay, king b1 first and bishop e7. Not a very common line. b5 is the normal move here, b5 and bishop into knight and pawn into bishop. So bishop e7, knight into knight, bishop into knight. I think quite a simplifying variation. While black seems to be very comfortable, black will get d5 quickly perhaps, and black should be okay here. Black doesn't seem to have any problems at the moment. h5, interesting, what is also possible to quickly try to play for d5. So bishop g5 back, making d5 difficult. Black's plan in Sicilian defense to play d5 break, and white is discouraging d5, and black still plays d5. So which means that it's a something like a sacrifice, because white can take bishop into knight and then take pawn into pawn. Another option is to play tactically e5, which is the pawn cannot be captured because of bishop f4 trapping the queen, and d5, bishop into f6 and taking on d5 was a valid option, but black just goes to castles. So bishop f6, ed5 long castle, and black should be fine. So here we have e5, a tactical move, and queen into e5 cannot be played because of bishop f4 and queen f5, bishop d3, and the queen is trapped. So black move. Somewhere I think a tactical inaccuracy by black to play d5. Black. The idea with h5 and d5 doesn't seem to be good. If one has to play d5, one could try to play directly, and then e5 move knight d7. You have black bishop, which is not such a bad piece. After h5, bishop g5. Now black is at a loss to know what to do, because knight moves and bishops are exchanged. You lose the right to castle. b5 and b4, the classical plan still comes into picture, but black goes for d5. I think a premature move. For the speed with which they are playing, it looks that they have prepared something, and the e5 move, white has taken 10 minutes for this, and black has just blitzed it out. Okay, so looks like a preparation, because it's allowing a queen check followed by f4 or direct f4, direct f4. Black seems to be very uncomfortable here. White has multiple plans: put the bishop on d3 and put the knight on d4, or first put the knight on d4. White also had option of queen check here, and then the king would have to go to f8 and then f4. So multiple options for white. Black's entire strategy revolves around preventing a break, because white plays bishop e2 and then g4 and breaks it, and then the h5 is going to be time consuming. Before that, white will have to put a knight on d4, black gets a knight on e4. So it looks complex, and although the setup looks extremely dubious for black by appearance, from the time position it seems that black has really prepared with the help of competitor before the game, an unusual position has been reached which has not been played before. And let's move to the game board 8 here. Here we have Aswath here and Igor Glek, a great strategist from Russia, now playing for Belgium, and Aswath is from Tamil Nadu. Queen's Gambit accepted. Glek is a theoretician and knows all lines, so this line probably simpler line to play for black, although this doesn't give much winning chances. So and lot of time consumed for basic moves. White goes for d5, a sharp line, and black thinks capturing the pawn is practically forced, either directly or after knight a5, but knight a5 doesn't make sense. So after preliminary exchanges of knights, I think white will have a center pawn more, and black has a majority on the queen side, and the game will revolve around white's successful advance of e4 and e5. Let's see how the game goes. We'll come to the game. So we have here the Dipan Chakravarti. Dipan Chakravarti was leading for quite some time, but now he is on the lower tables, and Dipan Chakravarti plays against Saurav Anand, Grandmaster. Dipan Chakravarti is Grandmaster. Saurav Anand is looking for international master norms. He is national under-9 champion and national under-19 champion. 2 national titles. He is from Patna, Bihar, and one of the few national champions. Patna has produced a Slav defense, a standard Slav defense, and black goes for Mehran variation rather than the regular Slav. Mehran variation, a very risky variation played by great players like Botvinnik and Vishwanathan Anand. And in Anand's own word, if you miss one move, then you could really get mated. So sharp variation. Let's see how Saurav Anand plays this. Dipan Chakravarti, a great master of attack. How Dipan plays this position. Dipan, usually a e4 player, has gone for d4 setup. So let's see what's on mind. Black plays e5. I think this exact position has been played by in the game Gelfand Anand, I believe, and the game had ended in a draw. Let's move to the next game. Saptarshi Raj Chaudhary, Grandmaster from Calcutta, playing against Asian under-18 champion De Silva of Sri Lanka. De Silva won the title of Asian under-18 championship in the month of December at Al Ain in UAE, and is quite a strong player, perhaps higher rated than Saptarshi Raj Chaudhary, because he's a very strong player. Let's see Ragozin defense. Okay, so black is also playing for a win, and Ragozin defense, one of the sharpest openings played by Grandmaster Ragozin. And here we have the very complex system here, and the moves like Queen A4 check is one of the moves, E3 is one of the moves, yes, and castles and Rook C1. So intending to capture on c3 with rook if required. Black hits back in the center, but rook c1, perhaps not a very accurate move if one has to play a3. So it's better to go for this, and upon sacrifice apparently white can take on d5, but black has a very good development here. White refrains from taking the pawn, and we have a very interesting position. I think black has solved the opening problems, and now we go to the next board. So here we have a sharp game between Tehbaz Ashraf is from Iran and is playing against Nitin Babu. The King's Indian attack, normally Tehbaz opens in this slow variation, and suddenly now we have got a English opening. It would get into Benoni variation if white plays d5. d5 is the most principled line and gives white some advantage. dc5, a simpler variation, and probably white is not looking for an opening advantage but just going for an equal opening and trying to beat the opponent by way of superior middle game play rather than opening preparation. Queen c1, white intends to exchange the black bishop with bishop d4 and then put some pressure along the d file, and the knight could go to b5, knight could go to d5, bishop goes to h6. So multiple threats are intended. If the bishops are exchanged, the f6 square could become a bit weak and white would be ready to play knight d5 here. So rook d8 and queen e3, connecting the rooks. Bishops are exchanged, and there's a dangerous threat of knight g5. So black plays the only move f6. Apparently, black is, I think, yet to equalize. Black has a lot of weaknesses, and the e6 weakness seems prominent, and the knight on h5 is not well placed. So not a very happy position. Let's move to the other game. Let's move to board number 12, where Antonio Vianney Dikunna of Mangalore, Karnataka is playing against Aditya Krishna, and we have again King's Indian attack or King's Indian defense, a symmetrical line where black has played an aggressive move, white has taken a pawn, knight d3, white wants to hang on to the pawn, white has given strong central pawn mass. So surely very quick play suggests that white has decided to hang on to this pawn, and we have black is now thinking. Let's move to board 13. So we have here Ritwij Parab, who was on the top board playing against Reza Menon. G3, knight f6. Again, overall the players have been trying to play not really the aggressive variations, but just the simple openings, King's Indian attack and the standard play. This position was popularized by Bobby Fischer, pawn into pawn and e5, another option. So c5's pawn is strong, but c3 covers knight to d4. Black wants to push c4 if possible, and standard moves here could be queen e2 with roughly equal position. White has been thinking, white has played very simple openings, and perhaps he has consumed maximum time for the move after c3. So how to deal with black's plan of c4? One option is to go for knight g5, and one is just black wants to play h6 and c4. So white is thinking where to put the queen. Queen could go to e2 or c2. In this particular position, c2 doesn't seem to be all that good. e2 seems to be better. We go quickly to the next two boards before we have a small break. So we have Vitaly Tatarov playing against S. Nitin here, and again a King's Indian attack. So we have King's Indian attack, the turning into Benoni, the exchange not played. So this position, Boris Spassky's idea to take the queen to h5 and put the d6 and bishop h3. Yes, indeed, Boris Spassky has got quite a few wins with black pieces in this, and the Fischer had come out with a new move which prevented this maneuver of queen a5 and queen h5 in the 1972 World Championship match. White wants to go for a queen exchange before black plays d6. So here white could have slight advantage. White has a weakness on c4, but white has some advantage. Knight could go to d5, and a roughly equal position has arrived. This endgame is little trickier from black's point of view, because anytime there's a weakness on the queen side, this could lead to a somewhat dangerous position. And now we have got 15th board. We have got Matta Vinay Kumar of Union Bank of India. He's from Andhra, and now he plays for Union Bank of India. He's playing against Sri Lankan Liange Dilshan, and let's see, Kalishnikov variation, a sister system of Sveshnikov or Pelican system. And we have, this position is a very sharp position. White has the option of playing knight to e3, and then either bishop to d3 or bishop to c4, quick castles, and putting a knight on d5. White goes for g3, somewhat a unknown variation, and then we have h5, a new move, and white is thinking. I think g3 is too committal. Black plays h5, it's a new move, and we have a very interesting position. So we'll be back after a 5 minutes break, and let's look at the first board in 5 minutes. Before we break, we see this tournament has 131 participants from 16 countries, and the prime sponsors of this event are Indore Waste Management, Red Cross Society, Path Foundation, Naveen Florin, Goel Group, and HDFC Bank, Dilip Bilkon, Kirloskar Brothers, and Mega Developers. And 10 Grandmasters, 2 Women Grandmasters, and 25 International Masters are playing. The venue of the tournament is the IPS Academy, the beautiful venue of IPS Academy. This is a Challengers event as well. Apart from this Masters event, the Challengers event ended yesterday, and now we have this particular event going on today, and tomorrow morning is the last round. This is a penultimate round. The championship is heating up, and we'll have a champion in less than 24 hours after this game and the last game. We have 2 very important rounds left. I'll see you in 5 minutes time. Then let's meet after 5 minutes. Don't go away. Welcome back to the 9th round of the second Indore International Grandmaster Chess Tournament 2024. We are looking at the top board game between Boris Savchenko, Grandmaster of Russia, and K. Ratnakaran, International Master of Kerala, India, Calicut. So this game started with a very complex opening, and Ratnakaran played a comparatively lesser known pawn advance on the queen side, and we had left the position at this stage when white had sacrificed a pawn in order to get some attack against the black king, and we had expected queen h5 check and knight moves and then castles. That was what we thought was going to be. Bishop e2, so something on mind, queen h3, and it looks like preparation because black has the option of playing e5 here. Now what happens to e5? A very complex question. After e5, white goes knight to e6, and if black goes queen to d7, then white has knight into d5, then queen into d5, a very complex variation that comes. And we also have a possibility of queen e7 that can be met with knight g7 check, but then waking it. I think e5 involves a piece sacrifice, so surely this opening has been analyzed because e5 attacks the knight as well as the queen, and white has one option of bishop g4, but after bishop into g4, the d4 knight is hanging. So e5 leads to different sort of complications. White could play knight e6, but then black has queen e7, queen d7, and different possibilities. Queen d6 for white, for which white has different options, and somehow this, it's very difficult position to analyze over the board. It looks like a prepared piece sacrifice. Let's move to next board. We are International Master Nilesh Shah playing against Grandmaster Alexei Fedorov of Belarus. The game had started with a old Indian defense, but eventually it got transposed into King's Indian defense, Fianchetto line, and the queen a5, the modern move was played. While the earlier move was pawn into d4, the most common, queen f5, queen c2, and pawn into pawn, knight into pawn, and queen c5, attacking the knight. And what does white do? For bishop e3, black wants to go something like knight g4, a risky option, but that looks like the idea. Black of course wants to take the pawn on c4 in case of bishop e3. So knight and pawn, two things are attacked, and it's not possible to guard both of them with queen d3 because knight e5 is coming. So what does white do? The only move to save this pawn, knight e2, and now black has complex options such as d5 coming here. Black is now thinking d5 looks like a possibility, though risky, but it intends at winning the c4 pawn. So white must do something about loss of a pawn and find some way where white gets good compensation for the lost pawn. One possibility could be to exchange on d5. Okay, we have d5 was, yeah. So d5 was not played here. Black played rook e8 and knight, rook e8, and knight goes to b3 and queen goes to e5, encouraging bishop f4. So bishop f4, queen e7, and rook d1, then knight to e5, bishop f4, and surely queen e7 looks like the only move here. Queen e6 looks very awkward. The knight would get a tempo against it, and d6 pawn is sometimes given, but this is not the right position. Queen e7 looks logical, attacking the e4 pawn. Black, yes, the e4 pawn is immediately attacked, so there may not be time for rook d1. So queen e7, and let's see how the game goes. Quite obvious move, but Fedorov is thinking for some time. So has he seen some problem with this move? Queen e7, perhaps sacrifice c5 is not accurate here. So yes, I think queen e7 attacks the e4 pawn, and if white plays knight c3 or knight d2, then black could try to put the knight on e5. White then moves the bishop from f4 and to e3 and plans for eventually for f4. So interesting position. Black never completely equalizes in this, but the result black has are quite good because it has got a tactical nature, and several great champions have played this system successfully. The most so renowned one and the one who was most successful in this particular structure as David Bronstein, world number 2, and of course Garry Kasparov, who played this position several times. Third board we have P. Inyan, the top seed in this tournament, Grandmaster P. Inyan, playing against Gautam Krishna. Gautam Krishna played King's Indian defense, and this was a sacrifice. I have not come across this sacrifice, but since players have played very quickly, Black has played in almost 0 seconds. So Black has actually gained 3 minutes in this 11 moves, 10 moves. So it means that 9 moves rather. So you get an increment of 30 seconds as soon as you make a move. But it means that Black has not actually thought about this move, and Black has already come prepared with this. White has taken some time. White took 13 minutes to reject the gambit. Normally when you are getting something free, you are supposed to capture it. It's generally good. But as I can see, after the white colored bishops get exchanged, Black does get some initiative. C5. After 30 minutes of thought, rejecting the gambit, Black wants White to take some immediate measures. So D line is closed. White is playing very safe. The pressure against D line is gone now, and if White plays E5, if Black plays E5, then there could be a problem with D5 squares. And White's idea at the moment now is to just complete the development, as Black has no improvement. White is not going to play B4 by itself, because knight would come to C4, although White may win a pawn in that, but that's not necessarily the best plan here. Perhaps White can just complete the development and compel Black to create something, because Black has to go for E5 break sometime or later, or pawn into C5. But to play pawn into C5, he needs to move the queen from the D5, and there's no convenient square for the queen. So one could say that Black does have some problems here. And suddenly, okay, we see suddenly Black has taken a lot of time. Black had blitzed out the moves, and for knight D7, Black said 33 moves, 33 minutes, and for rook D1, another 28 minutes. So I think there's some completely taken aback by this move C5, and he has analyzed the gambit so well that he played so fast, and that is what it is. I think a good judgment by Inyan. Inyan doesn't play the most principled move, that's the capture of the pawn, but instead goes for a line where Black, it's a new position for both of them, and that is where the things are very relevant. Let's move to next board. We had started this game, we had reached a very interesting position, and now we have a Rosser attack here, the standard variation. Bishop a2, bishop d7, bishop f3, rook c8, king b1. Black king is stranded in center, but if the queens get exchanged, then Black is better, and White has a plan of pushing f5 and moving the queen, bringing the knight to f4 or d4, put more and more pressure on e6 point, and compel Black to capture on f5 or move e5. Then the white knight could land at d5 square. So queen d2, a natural reaction, rook c7, f5 sacrifice looks logical, yes, very good. And the standard game h5. White wants to play bishop h5, which will be very awkward for Black to meet, so h5. And now knight e2, as we are discussing, knight is heading for f4. The slight disadvantage in this position is that if the bishop is on f8, and the knight f4 moves can always be met with bishop h6. So we have Odiyame of Goa, international master, playing against P.V. Nandita, member of Indian women's team in the Olympiad and woman grandmaster, one of the two international women grandmasters playing here. And let's see, queen e5. This is generally a good square, but this is not a outpost, as White's natural plans to play knight f4 and knight d3, driving away the queen. So knight f4 played, and rook h7, and I think here knight d3, rook f1, then the standard moves, put rook on e1 or f1, or take on h5. Take on h5 is also a possibility. You just win a pawn, and then you want to play a slower game. Taking on queen into e4 is not possible after bishop h5 because of f into e6, with dangerous threats against the f7 point, e6 point. So I prefer White here. White is thinking, probably White is thinking of some decisive move. F into e6 is also a possibility, trying to win the pawn. but then the queen supports the h5 pawn. So after f6, the h pawn is no longer capturable. Though white has different options of like knight g6, which does not make sense. At the moment, bishop into h5 looks like the most accurate move, and let's see what course of action white takes here. So here we have on board 5, we have Nguyen of Vietnam playing against Sahil. There is something strange about this game because white had played one move and black did not turn up, and quite an unfortunate incident. The game has ended 1-0. There's no reason to remove the first move. White had played c4 and black did not turn up. That's called walkover. By forfeit, the game was lost. So I think a very disappointing day for Sahil. Perhaps he's unwell, but he has not come to the tournament hall in the prescribed time of whatever you have. A player loses on time by forfeit if a player doesn't turn up in some specific time declared before the start of the tournament. Although the first time control comes after 60 minutes or 90 minutes, if you don't show off to the board, then you lose. Not necessarily, the opponent doesn't have to wait for 90 minutes. Sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's half an hour. Excuse me. There we go. To the 6th board, we have Grandmaster Sham Nikhil playing against Uzbek Grandmaster Zumay Marat from Tashkent. Modern defense. Zumay always plays modern defense and sometimes converts into Perk defense, but rarely. Knight bd7 is a common move in his repertoire. a4. White's play is not really fantastic. White goes for a very simple way of play, and black seems to have equalized here, although objectively white has a strong central pawn compared to that of the black. So white could always boast of some space advantage, but not necessarily a tangible advantage, and we could say the position is roughly with equal chances. Now we have the game Ilam Parthian Kashish Jain. I think somewhere the Richard Rosen attack where the preparation was a key factor, looking at the times taken by the players. And here the English attack setup after exchanging knights, white played h4, h6, bishop e3 and h5. Black seems to be fine, and for bishop g5 a bold move d5 which allows e5 and the exchange of dark colored bishops, and it seemed that this is quite good. White took some time, 9 minutes to play this one. Black has blitzed out the move, forced move. King has moved, but black is not worried, so obviously a part of preparation. Queen g5 check here came into consideration, f4, and black just plays g6. Black has more time than the time allotted at the start of the game. We had 90 minutes, and now we have here, now white has 94 minutes left. So knight e2, logical way to put the knight on d4. Black puts knight on c5. Perhaps black is not playing it quickly. White has to open up f5, which looks very difficult, which means that first bishop e2 and then g4 break and then h5 break and then f5. Very slow because black knight would land at e4, creating serious threats. So surely opening is fundamentally a risky position for black, and if black doesn't create counterplay, black will be worse. But black does intend to play knight c5, knight a4, knight c1, knight e4, and the white king could become weak, and that looks like the logic behind playing with a bad bishop and with a bad king. No sacrifices seem to be working immediately. White can't really go for queen to g3 and then bishop d3 and bishop into g6. Doesn't seem to work. Black has prepared, and black took time for the first time in the game. Black really thought about was the move after knight e2. Knight e2 the most obvious move. He left at knight e2, g6, knight e2 as a normal move, and for normal this move black has actually thought about this and chosen queen b6 to knight c5. Let's move to board 8 here, Aswat versus Igor Glek. Glek, a great theoretician from Russia, now staying in Belgium, and we had left at this stage. Nothing much has happened after this. Knight f4. So doesn't take the bishop, doesn't take the knight, and moves knight to f4, bishop d6. That's what's move. I'm trying to find out the purpose of retreating the knight when it had a good capture possible. What I felt more logical was to take on e7 and play b3 and bishop b2, hoping to get advantage with the strong bishop. Black would probably exchange the bishops, or black would go bishop g4, but move chosen, it's confusing, and I'm really trying to find out the idea behind this. After bishop d6, black is also planning to play queen c7. Black should be fine. If black gets queen c7 and rook b8 and b5, black would actually be better, so white has to be careful. White has played 3 moves of one piece. Knight is not all that good. So here we have on the 9th board, we have Deepan Chakravarti playing against Saurav Anand. So we have a Slav defense which transposed into now Meran variation, because black did not play dc4, and we have a very sharp opening. e5, I think a standard position. e4, a dangerous move. White wants to open up the center, and knight into knight, bishop into knight, and h6. Rook d1 could be one possibility, taking on e5 could be a possibility. Rook d1 play, trying to build in pressure in the d file, and at this stage white has a threat of d into e5, so black must move the queen, and queen e7 looks like a more reasonable square than queen to c7. Queen to c7, of course, it attacks the queen, so it has the advantage of attacking the queen, but otherwise it is a riskier move. Queen e7 is possible because the rook has come to d1, so the rook is not likely to go back to e1. White has advantage because of black's hanging positions, but looks like a very nominal advantage. Queen f6 also comes into consideration, and black should be able to equalize with accurate play, but white does have some advantage. We move to the board 10. Grandmaster Saptarshi Roy Chaudhary of Calcutta playing against international master of Sri Lanka, De Silva, who is who won the Asian Under-18 Championship just 3 weeks ago at Al Ain in UAE. So a variation where black plays logically and opens up the game. It's clear that black is playing for initiative and not satisfied with equality, but yet it's not easy to justify the complex move. Queen, black was threatening to win white queen with knight into f3 check, bishop into f3. The rook on d8 gets opened up against d1, so black wants to exchange the knights, and after black plays knight into f3, white has a check, and also the white queen is attacked, and instead of moving the queen, which is not a good option, or taking on d4, which is not a good option, white plays an interesting move, knight e4. Black has the option of capturing the knight followed by the queen, but it turns out to be disastrous because white takes the queen with check, and then white takes the rook as well, and it's possible to take the bishop queen f4, a nice move. Knight attacked and threat against the queen. If knight into d4, you have queen into e4 and rook c4, a very complex line. White has more hanging pieces than black, and a matter of concern, white is the extra pawn, which is not really an asset, but white is playing very complex positions with lot of hanging pieces. The queen is under attack, and the e4 knight is under attack, so an awkward move like queen d3 is also possible, but bishop f5 then meets with bishop f5. So it's logical to play knight into d4, but then comes queen into e4, attacking the pinned knight on d4. And if rook c4, then we have bishop e6. No, rook c4 is possible, attacking the bishop on b4. So bishop into c5. I think it's a complex line where white is struggling to maintain the sort of advantage. Knight d6 is a quieter move. White can play knight d6, and black will take bishop into c5 followed by rook into d6. But then we have c8 hanging. So let's look at knight d6, bishop into c5, rook into c5, then you have rook into d6, knight into d4, takes on d4, queen moves to c1 or c2. I think equality, white plays in d6, white would be still worse, but I think it's just roughly equal. Let's go to the next game, board number 11 by Taibaz Arash and Nitin Babu. So we have the English opening here, basically started with King's Indian attack, but now it has become English opening setup, symmetrical variation, and an opening where apparently white had no reason to gain an advantage, but black played quite a few weakening moves, knight h5. Now I really prefer white's position. White was threatening knight g5, so f6 had to be played, a weakening move, and now the only open file is with white. The queen is powerfully placed and planning to go to e6. So black has weaknesses all over the board, and a strategic puncture with g4 and g5 also is in air, though not possible. Knight b5 is an irritating move here, trying to win some material. Knight b5 threatens to win the a7 pawn. Knight b5 also threatens knight to go into c7 and winning the e pawn. It's going to be a very complex knight b5 played. Black is in a bad way. I believe the pawn cannot be taken on a7 because of bishop into f3, but let's see, queen a3, the a7 pawn attacked, and a6, and perhaps he wants to get knight to d4 or c3, knight to c3. Now the b6, the freshly weakened b pawn has been weakened because of the advance a6, the freshly weakened b pawn is going to be the target next, queen b3 and knight a4, so rook into rook, queen into rook, b4. Opening the game, but taking advantage of the fact that black knight will not come to d7. None of the black knights will come to d7 to guard the b6 weakness. Pawn into pawn, queen into pawn. A second attack at the b6 point intended with knight a4 with no chance of defense. So knight a4 prevented. c5. Aggressive play, but more or less leading to simplification, and if things continue, it would ease the black's task of equalizing, because the black's weaknesses have been exchanged. I think b4 and c5, the logical plan would have been queen b3 here and trying to attack the b6 point, but yeah, and after d8, queen d8, b4, and we have a small break here. We'll meet after 5 minutes, and thank you. See you after 5 minutes. Don't go away. We resume the session in just 5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
So welcome back to the 9th round of the second International Grandmaster Chess Tournament Indore. The earlier edition was last year, and also a National Under-9 was conducted. This tournament attracts 131 players, including 10 Grandmasters, 2 women Grandmasters, 25 International Masters from 16 countries and 4 continents. So let's resume our games, watching the games as well as some talks. So, please, Sumitji. So, yeah.
First of all, happy Makar Sankranti to everyone.
To all the viewers. Yes.
To all the viewers. And certainly, sir, you coming to Indore and doing live commentary is one of the exemplary things that we have received in this particular time.
Thank you.
So, I would like to take this opportunity to let our viewer know who GM Praveen Thipse is actually all about. When did he start playing chess? What was the initial motivation? Because at that time, like, India wasn't considered as a chess nation, I would say, like initial.
A sports nation, rather
a sports nation.
Sport
Yes.
had a very importance. So I think it was a very, very pertinent question to today's times. Thank you. So
Yes,
what
sir.
happened was, I think we're talking of times when I was in school, and this more than 50 years back. I played my first tournament in 1971, and
Okay.
before that I was playing chess for another 5 or 6 years as a beginner. I didn't have the knowledge of tournaments and or international games. But in those days, sports was, I think, something which was considered to be in a true spirit of sport. I mean, it wasn't really a career option. In the sense, the Wimbledon, for example, in the 60s had a first prize of £1,000 or something, and the highest prize money that was given to any sports event that was Fischer-Spassky Chess World Championship match in 1972, and the prize money itself was $125,000 only. So the winner's purse was around 75,000 and loser's purse was about 50,000. So the sport and money, these things didn't go together. It was mainly the amateur activity, and that's how it should be. The entire Olympic movement is about amateurs playing it, because we know that the sport, if everybody is playing taking sport as a career, then who runs the factories and who makes the manufacture? So obviously, now the things have changed. So under this circumstance, I started playing. I was a beginner with no books, and I played we played with Indian rules, and we didn't know the rule of castling and en-passant.
Okay.
So it was a big challenge to play in those days. But luckily, as we were able to beat our neighbors and parents, and what I mean by we is my elder brother, who was a national player and was played for the country, and my younger brother, who was national sub-junior champion in Satish Thipse. So elder brother Abhay Thipse. So we all started playing with each other. The parents taught us, and we remained beginners for a long time till we got in touch with the international rules by playing a tournament, and wherein we came in contact with Bombay Chess Association and great chess players from Bombay in those days. In those days, we had out of the 14 national players, 7 to 8 were always from Mumbai. And then it was Bombay Chess Association, and we had assistance and guidance, invaluable guidance from Shri Krishna Sakhalkar, who was India number 2 once, and of course the first national champion R.B. Sapre, who also contributed a lot to the Mumbai chess. And they always discuss positions, and the Fischer-Spassky games were discussed. And this is the way.
And game 6 has been like.
we came into the chess stream rather than a gully ka player, because everywhere we have a gully ka player. Everybody plays at home, and that's
okay. So, sir, the idea is like you very well put into it. Like sports must be considered as an amateur activity, so that now it is seen as a career option when like the prize fund is very high and like in various sports, I would say. So chess is always considered as a very intellectual game. Like there are a lot of things going in your mind rather than on the activity. So when did you decide that I want to be a professional chess player, like, or it was just like by, and how parents took it? Because
well, it wasn't professional in the sense. I was working 9 hours a day or 8 hours a day in a nationalized bank, and I retired only at the age of 60. But yes, in spite of spending 7 or 8 hours in the initial days, I had the passion to sort of play this. But that's a different part. First, we'll come to the. I was quite reasonably successful, and I, in my first attempt at the age of 15, I tied for the first place in national junior, and as a result of that, I was able to play in the World Junior. I was the youngest participant in the World Junior, 1975 in Tentistad. I was just 15, and during the tournament, I became 16, and it was a very tough tournament, of course, a World Championship. And then I got a good. I was the first Indian to get a medal first Indian to get a medal. I got a bronze medal in the Asian Junior Championships. In a continental tournament, I was the first Indian to get a. Earlier, the Indians had won medals in the zonal championships, a part of Asia, but the entire Asian continent, I think I was the first one to get a medal. So I was reasonably successful, but I did not play the senior nationals till I completed my post-graduation.
Okay.
So and after my post-graduation, I decided to give a try for 2 years, and then I didn't go for a professional career in my own field, that was organic chemistry, drugs and antibiotics.
Okay.
So the logical course was me to do some research or to join a pharmaceutical or to also try something else, but related to that. But basically research or job as junior chemist, that was what was expected. I decided to give a try for 2 years. That was a big decision, and I set some targets which were quite tough by the Mumbai standards. And I said, because after 1962, Mumbai had not produced any national champion.
Oh.
So it was 55 and 62. 55 it was R.B. Sapre, and 62 it was Rusi Madan. And there were only twice Maharashtra players had won national championship. It had made more common for Tamil Nadu players to win even then. So I set a target of becoming national champion and also becoming international master in 2 years. And when I set that target, I decided that I was going to give these 2 years, and if I didn't achieve any one of them, then I would go back to the organic chemistry. And
all right. So plan B was already there.
Losing 2 years is not a big issue. And when I got into this, I became national champion in the first attempt, and I became international master. That too in month of December 82, which I had planned. I passed out in 80. So 82. So in that, I decided I would play chess, and I would take any job that could make the things easy. I mean, in a research and other analytical jobs, you can't really. So I decided not to get into a private sector where you couldn't get leave. My problem was not working. My problem was getting loss of pay leave for tournaments, sometimes paid leave. And this could be done only with a government or
enterprise.
Or public sector. So I joined a bank, a nationalized bank.
That's wonderful.
But it's not that we didn't have to work. Only thing is, we were getting special leave. We were getting our own leave. The special leave was not sanctioned, and our presence was not made absolutely. We were not liable to any disciplinary action. If we played for a tournament, it would be only a loss of pay or a tournament with sanctioned leave. So special leave with loss of pay, or special leave with full pay, special leave with TAD and allowances. So different categories, different restrictions.
And I believe, sir, you must have utilized all of your the leave LTCs into playing chess only.
Yes, in fact, the first time I joined the bank in 1983, and before that I had done another government job for 2 years. I'll come to that later. But then first time I availed my LTC or LFC, we call it, was in 1998, and the second time I availed was in 2006, and in my service of 36 years I availed it only twice, because I had to play so many tournaments. I thought it's better to take your only and play tournaments rather than going for holidays. There's no holidays if you're an active player and also work 8 hours in a office.
And sir, you became international master in 1982.
Yeah.
So it was way before Vishwanathan Anand sir, I believe.
Yes.
You were international master before him?
Yes, much earlier, because he's 10 years younger to me.
Yes. And the first IM was Manuel Aron sir.
Correct, exactly.
So in getting Arjun Award at the age of like I believe 26 or 25.
Yes,
1984,
25, 1984,
you received Arjun Award.
At the age of 25, yeah.
So by that time, parents were very relieved and everyone relieved that getting Arjun Award, highest award for sports, and means like he has achieved whatever a normal parents want their kid to achieve, I believe.
Yes, I think success. Yes, success in sport was there, but I must say that I got the Shiva Chhatrapati Award when I was in my post-graduation MSc, and at that time the award did not have any cash prize. Or even when I got Arjun Award, it had a cash prize of mere 5,000 rupees. So it wasn't something that would support you. It was not possible to be a professional player, but yes, it was a great honor, and that's the reason why. But the lesser award, it was not Khairat but Rahiye sort of attitude was not that the government. So now that Khairat but Rahiye, this is attitude in all governments since 1998.
Yes.
And you know even the Khel Ratna, which means the best sportsman, even that is shared or given to 2 or 3 people. So if the government cannot decide who is the best player in the country at that particular year, then who else can? So it's a difficult thing, but there's Khairat nahi batti thi, as we can say, and that, as a result, it was a very honored and prestigious.
And certainly only the worthy people were getting it, basically.
Because when in 1998, Milkha Singh ji refused to take it, saying that Khairat but Rahiye were his exact words. He said that 128 people getting Arjun Award is a larger number than what had been given from 1961 to 1997. So when 128 people were given, Milkha Singh ji refused to take it, saying that the Khairat Batri up to. So that was not the case in 84. It's really respected, and even today, Arjun Award before 1998 does get a greater respect than those subsequently. I don't mean that the players, we have stronger players actually, but not all of them are strong.
Equally worthy, I would say.
Because when I got Arjun Award, I had already won individual gold medal in Asian Team Championship, and that was a fantastic result. I defeated a Chinese player, and I had very good result in the British Championships and Commonwealth Championship. And then, of course, after I got the Arjun Award, I won the Commonwealth Championship. So I was the first Indian to win the Commonwealth Championship.
Like the European people or the Russians, in fact, I would like
the
to
East
ask.
Europeans, but
the East European,
Soviets,
Soviets. So were they very welcoming in like Indian players or in the early days? Because I have heard one incident spoken by Vishwanath Anand sir, like even a Russian taxi driver might know more chess than me when I first entered into Russia. This was my notion. So basically, so when you people like you, the initial one, and I have seen one game of Manuel Aaron sir with Bobby Fischer also. There is one game available, I believe. And
only
I have
once
seen
they played.
Only once they have played. So basically, how was like the initial challenges for Indian chess? Nowadays, like 3 people are participating in candidates out of 8. So things have changed quite a lot. But what were the initial challenges?
There are quite a few challenges. In the sense, in those days, there was no data available. So, like, if somebody played a great move and something, a variation from your variation, you would need 3 or 4 months to get that move. But we had to wait for the international magazine to international Informant, Chess Informant to be published and come to us by post, which took 3 or 4 months. When by then, those who are playing, for example, the Russians would get the moves by the telex from their consulate, and that sort of encouragement they had. So they are all aware of these moves, and very often we got into bad position just because we had not seen the latest games. So it was a challenge. Today it's different. Everything is online. The moment Carlsen plays a good new move, it's known to the entire world in 2 or 3 hours. So it's completely different. The main challenge was the communication problem. Also getting the visa invitations. If you are playing international tournament, then sometimes I remember the Polish Federation, they just sent me a visa. I did play in Poland so many times, but Czech Federation, others, they sent us the invitation by normal letter, and we received the letter when it was already too late to go. So there's no communication possible. No telephones. It was not easy. Nobody called on telephone then. Telephone was very, very expensive. So it was, I think, I have seen days where the STD was there. The STD was not there. You have to make a trunk call. So these are the days the international calls were difficult and expensive. The airfares were so expensive. First time I went to to Austria. The government paid the airfare because I was a junior champion. But the 13,000 was the airfare to Austria in 1977, which was equivalent to, I think, 70 times salary of a average teacher or clerk. 70 times. And now if you look at it, the European ticket is available at half of the cost of a teacher's salary, maybe little less.
True. Absolutely.
So these are the big challenges that if I had to buy, and there were a lot of regulations. When I played for the World Junior for the first time, I was 15, and I had no foreign exchange because foreign exchange regulations were very strict. And the only foreign exchange I got was the $6 you could get at the airport for the journey period. So there's a journey period, but luckily I didn't need money in journey period. At $6 is nothing, but at the same time, you could, in those days you could get $1 million $6. Now it's not possible. So it's just for the journey period, but that's the foreign exchange that was released at the airport and the FTT, and subsequently things changed. So the challenges were bigger. Communication was a problem, information was a problem, and coaching, of course, was a problem.
Coaching itself was a problem.
Yes, eventually things changed. We did dominate in the when I started playing, Iran was dominating, but eventually we became stronger. And then in Commonwealth Championship, when I won for the first Indian, it was taken as a great sort of surprise. Even 7 years later, even in 1992, when we beat England in the Olympiad, we were 19th seed. Vishwanath Anand was top board, but still our seeding was 19th, and England led by shot and everybody, Michael Adams, they were second seed, and our defeating them was also
a big news.
Big news in the country, in Philippines, in the Manila Olympiad. So the challenges were completely related to the
majorly to infrastructural and
also
information.
Necessary infrastructure and the availability of material and books.
But people were welcoming all over the world, like
everywhere. I think we had very good experience with British Chess Federation. We had fantastic experience with the Soviets and the Russian Federation, but it's not Russian Federation, the USSR Federation. We went under the protocol, Indo-Soviet cultural protocol, and we got very good treatment. We got a lot of, and we got, luckily we had under the protocol, whenever we had some lectures like Grandmaster Taimanov, Grandmaster Verbach, some of the all-time greats, Grandmaster Palatnik, Grandmaster Shereshevsky, Dvoretzky, they all had lectures for us, and each and every of the lecture was very, very sort of good, in the sense it taught us things which we couldn't really believe we're going for that. And sometimes it was not only the coaching sessions, but it was also games. Like in one of the Olympiad, in one of the Lloyds Bank tournaments, I was able to make a draw against Boris Spassky, former world champion, and the one who lost only to Bobby Fischer. And he was white, and he was a strong player, and he was very strong even then after losing the world championship title. And our game ended in a draw. I was only international master at that time, 1984.
Nice.
The game ended in 19 moves and 1.5 hours, but he offered to analyze the position for me, and he analyzed the game for 2.5 hours with me. And I learned at least 100 things about the position from that. So that's, I think the knowledge was for sharing and not for money then.
True. And sir, like, so initially, basically, the love for the game that kept you motivated for those tough times, or like?
Yes, I think. As a child, my mother was a teacher, a municipal teacher, and she got my autobiographies and biographies of great people, and also great literature, like sometimes translated when I was in vernacular medium. So Shakespeare and Charles Dickens and Alexander Dumas and Victor Hugo, Maupassant, everything we read, and at the same time we read a lot of important things. So one of the important things was the translation of autobiography cum biography of Sir Donald Bradman. So Sir Donald Bradman, because he was a different age group, much elder to my time certainly. And he had, he mentioned that there's a common question that came to him was that you're working in an office job 9:30 to 5:30, so how do you find time to practice? And the reply given to him, I think as a child it impressed me a lot. He said that, he had said that earlier I was getting at 8 o'clock and going to office for 9:30. I started getting, when I needed to practice cricket, I started getting up at 6 o'clock, and these 2 extra hours in the day I was utilizing, and weekends was a regular practice, but I got 10 hours more than the other cricketers because I started getting up early. So I think that is where I learned my lesson of we have to manage your
balancing
if,
the things.
Yes,
like
if I have to think of chess, because okay, you can't avoid the 7 or 8 hours of office. If you think playing chess to us, we have to give up the habit of mixing with friends, and I mean sometimes we are talking I mean things which are ideologically good, but they are not very productive, and we talk of society and other things which are good. It's a reaction, it's an interaction with the society and friends. But if you are doing something in a field which others are not doing, you can't afford to
then you have to embrace that solitudeness.
I also had I mean I always interviewed I always saw the interviews of the players who topped the IAS and IPS, and everybody in the 70s and early 80s said that after college we stopped going into the boys groups which were meeting after the college hours. So there are generally groups which go and talk about generally how are you and how are things,
about cars, about these and
cars, what does your father do, and how are you, and did you read this book or something of that sort, or have you read this latest book, or what do you think of the Shakespeare? All great thoughts, but they had stopped this. They said that we started studying of our own subject and the general knowledge. So somewhere I think everybody makes a sacrifice. And for example, if you see in the Kaun Banega Crorepati, sometimes the illiterate people have greater knowledge because they have been browsing things, and the professors and the doctors who are busy in their own profession do not have the answer of a very simple question.
Yes. So it's a wonderful lesson for all of kids and all of like amateur player who are willing to have an improvement at chess, that you have to extract time, you have to embrace that solitudeness. You can't be doing everything like...
You have to sacrifice something.
You have to sacrifice something basically. Yeah, that's good. That's great, sir. And sir, what is now is once I was watching the interview of Mr. Vishwanathan Anand, he was saying like now there is no like Asian school of chess or European school of chess or Russian school of chess. Now it's all in all computer school of chess. And Grandmaster R.B. Ramesh also like narrating in one of the incidents. Now it has become very difficult to improve in chess nowadays because of availability, huge availability of games and computers, and now people prepare a lot. And so for like young kid like 10-year or 8-year-old, what is your basic advice to like parents as well as that kid, I would say?
Well, I think parents, because kids will not be able to set a goal, but parents have to set a goal as what we want to do. Vishwanathan Anand has said that if you are not a grandmaster by age of 15,
you should stop playing chess.
There is no chance of you making a successful living by playing professional chess. He doesn't mean you should stop, but he says you can't be making enough money. And it becomes like, see, we are, in a way, we're amateurs because we had different jobs, and we're in true spirit amateurs because we worked like other employees, and then we had limited time. So it's not a question of being amateur by a rating. Sometimes amateurs do well, and that was the case with our generation, that not only chess but other Arjuna Award is all working in offices, and they're tough times. So they still found time to practice. And now the thing is, time is there available, probably computer gives you a lot of things, but are you looking at a professional career? Everybody can't be a Gukesh or Pragnanand or Vishwanathan Anand.
So when parents should decide that, okay, Gukesh and Pragyananda, they are different league, or the...
Now they are different league, but 7 years back they may not have been different.
Yes, certainly. And sir, you also echo the saying of Vishwanathan Anandji, like that once, if you are not becoming a grandmaster by the age of 15, you should not look for the professional chess.
Yeah, I think because I never took it, although I was Asian gold medalist and Commonwealth champion, I continued to do my job.
Your job.
And there were times where I could have, there was lucrative coaching career also option, but I thought let me finish the job. And
so basically, like by the age of 15 or 16, if you are becoming international master or grandmaster, then you should pursue
master
it.
Perhaps a bit earlier, maybe 14 or
maybe 14. Otherwise, you should have a balance, strike a balance between academics and like, as well as you should play chess, there is no doubt, because you love that game, and you should play it amateurically, like, but you should not think about getting professional.
No, you could look at it as professionally, but you cannot think in terms of the sacrifices we make or the losses we make. For example, the colleagues which joined, say, pharmaceutical sector with me, my colleagues, some of them did PhD, but I'm talking about somebody who took a pharmaceutical job and joined as a junior chemist. After 30 years time, what is the case? They're all either directors or general managers, and they have very high salaries. What happens to a sportsman earns, even if you, for example, we know what Neeraj Chopra has won this time, a few crores. What happens after he stops playing? The income is going to be zero.
Yes.
But of course, he's a government employee and he's with Central Reserve Police Force, where I also had joined Central Reserve Police Force for a different reason. But that is how it is. Mary Kom, what are the sports winnings? Okay, what the moment will come, will just, for example, take off Deepa Karmakar. She's athlete, she's a gymnast. Gymnast at the age of 23 to get that performance is great. But you live 60 years. So what do you earn from say 25 to 60? Almost nothing. And if you don't earn anything, then are you able to earn millions of billions by the time you quit? Okay, Carlsen can do it, Kasparov can do it, Anand can do it. But I've seen Khalifman, a former world champion, playing in a tournament with the first prize of $3,000.
Oh.
So it's not I mean, it's like Ponomaryov was played in a tournament where first prize, even Kasim Zanov.
And even like Professor Emmanuel Laskar, he started playing again chess just to for prize, or in his later age, I believe. Like
no, he wanted to earn money for different reason.
Okay.
Because Dr. Laskar lost all his money. He invested that into German government bonds, and after the First World War, the German bonds didn't have any value, and he was bankrupt. And at that time, he had to play the World Championship match. He didn't win. It was the only match where he did not win any game, and he lost to Capablanca. And for a return match, he needed money, and he started playing. He gave up chess because of his bad result. But because he was a very strong player, in 3 tournaments he finished ahead of Capablanca, while Capablanca was world champion. But still, he did not get enough money to play a return match, because for return match, a world champion would claim a particular amount as a guarantee money or a prize fund. Who would give the prize fund? The challenger has to give the prize fund. That was the setup then.
Nice, sir. So, are you willing to take a break or coffee break? I would
yes,
like.
We'll perhaps go back to the first.
Sir, board number 4 is a very interesting board today, because board number 4, Nandita is looking for, I believe, like she is doing perfectly well in this tournament.
Yeah, initially first she was leading after 4 rounds, and this opening chosen, it's a bit, as I said, the queen on e5 is not solid, and the knight with d3. So white fixes the h4. I'm not sure if Nandita is in a good position. White is ready to take the extra pawn. Yeah, rook e3. At this stage, it seems that white is much better. Rook is coming to c3, but main thing is the h5 pawn is capturable, and taking on e6 is also good. I don't know why the e4 pawn was not taken so long, but now perhaps Nandita has some relief with bishop h6 coming. The bishop h6 again won't come if it's the rooks are exchanged and d6 pawn is hanging. So one has to see rook c3 is a possibility as well, and queen goes to b6. So bishop can go to h6, but it's a complex.
And generally, sir, how deep you go into calculation? Like this is a very 21 moves, so it's middle game, the complex middle game position basically.
Here first we have to see that the h5 pawn is hanging for a long time. It is a good option to take the pawn as well, but white is going for a more direct plan. White wants to put rook on c3 or d3 and then take on e6 and go for some tactical e5 break. So bishop f8. So all Nandita has to, she has to defend very alertly and keep on avoiding any tactical shots, because there could be a shot, the bishop into h5 is hanging, for which she wants to play bishop h6, winning a piece now at the moment. But earlier the pawn was capturable. After rook c3, white can take bishop h5 or knight h5 after the preliminary exchanges. So or a preliminary exchange on e6 as well, the knight takes h5, attacks the f6 point. So at the moment rook c3 and the exchange of 2 pieces and the knight into h5, black has just lost a pawn. But 2 bishops would give a chance of equalizing. So we look at it, the h5 is hanging and no piece is going. So we may rook c3. Direct knight into h5, this is bishop h6. So we go rook c3 and we exchange the rooks perhaps. And then we take on h5 with a knight, we are taking f6. Or we take on e6 preliminary and then take. So this is, I think, a rough. And this is no pieces going and you are winning a pawn. Now, if this is not working, other things are not going to work. So you should generally take this, or if you find a mating attack coming, which is not coming.
So this bishop f8 is basically to prepare for bishop h6.
H6. Actually, Ameya has played a amazing way, but the way Keres played was to put bishop on d3 and knight on f3 and rook on f1 and sacrifice e5 and open up the f line rather than going for the h pawn. That's what Keres' idea. And I remember one of the games, Anand against MVL, Vachar Lagarev, Anand also won in the similar manner, just like the Keres.
So how many games you remember? Like 10,000?
No, 20,000? I don't remember so many games, but I remember patterns. If you tell me that what happened in the 11th game of Fischer-Spassky, I would tell you this was the important factor. I think you can't remember everything, but you have to remember significant things.
Okay.
For example, you can't remember what was the when did you pass out your 10th standard, what was the day, but you remember your date of birth or your date of marriage.
So it's basically pattern recognition is...
Yes, it's a pattern recognition, and like this, what I said, knight on, queen on e5 is not solid because I've seen Keres put knight on f3.
For example, as a very amateur person, sir, when I see this position, so my first opinion is like Nandita is doing all the thing to protect that h5 pawn right now.
But she has only, but so far it was supported only once. So White's idea is not to capture that basically.
Okay, because White could have captured it earlier also, quite long.
So that doesn't seem to be White's idea. So White wants to attack the, but bishop f8 is a good move because bishop did nothing. If you go back to this pawn structural setup, then the more common variation is here a6 and bishop d7. Here is the variation a6, castle, bishop d7. In this line, the bishop is already on f8. And then the bishop entering f6, gf6 is more common. Here a6, here castles is the main move. Because then the d6 pawn is sacrificed. The main move is castles and bishop into f6, and knight b3 and knight c6, the gambits. So in this line, you have a double pawn. This is also a possible line. But bishop on e3 is not well placed. That's the only problem. Bishop on e7. Had the bishop on f8, it would have directly gone to h6 when required. So somewhere in this particular pawn structure, the piece which is badly placed is bishop on e7.
Because it is like sort of trapped.
Yes, it's trapped, and it's the only place where it could make sense was h6, where it has to eventually go. But for that, she has to drive the queen away, and that's a. So what she drives away the queen is driven away. Now bishop f8 made sense. Rook c7 is a safer move because White was threatening some sort of sacrifices. I don't know, e5 could be made by d5, but okay, she has chosen to support the bishop and f5, and there's a threat of bishop h5 now, so h5 and knight e2, and here bishop f8 comes into consideration, but bishop f8 doesn't really, and bishop f8 White. Bishop f8 was possible, and White goes c3, then probably bishop h6, then queen into d6. So White could go c3 in case of bishop f8, but then Black has a chance. Black could plan b5 and something like that. So queen e5, I don't know if it's the best move because.
So, for example, in the previous position, as an amateur guy, when we play, so generally, if I am black, so I'll try to capture that like f pawn with my d pawn. But then again recapturing it, and I'll take another pawn also. So I'm getting one pawn up.
Yes, but e file gets opened up. You're opening. You have homeless king. Then you have one place rook e1 and knight d4, and you could get.
And kind of like e file is will be getting opened, and
rook e1 and knight d4.
And the bishop will be pinned very soon.
Yes, a lot of attack will start immediately. So it's unplayable to take. Also, you give d5 square for the knight. So even if I'm not opening the e file, White knight would land at d5. That itself would be disastrous. So queen e5, I think, overprotecting this e6 square, but she is not in a position to counterattack the e4 pawn. And anyway, bishop c6 is not a counterattack because e4 cannot be taken. So rook h7, and here I think it is possible to capture the pawn for h4. Even now it's possible to capture the pawn. Even now it's possible to capture the pawn. But white is playing more ambitiously.
More ambitiously, I would say.
For checkmate rather than this. But I think perhaps black may survive with this. Yeah, so let's come to board 1 now.
And I think somewhere like he's getting his rook to like b file.
Yes, rook to c file.
C file, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, we went to which board? We went to round 3. Sorry, we go to round 9, and we go to. Yeah, this is the game which is I think we need to think of, because this could be a championship game. So we left at this stage, and then we have. Black is not trying to win a piece with e5. So now black wants to play this. So 26, and now yes, it was a question where I was just wondering what knight b6 he wants to play, but then comes queen and bishop into e6. So knight g7 check, then king d8, and the bishop b6 check is going to be.
How these people prepare, sir? They haven't castled for 15 moves.
So there's a confusing move here, knight g7. Yeah, they prepare with engine, so they don't really. It's possible to play sacrifice knight g7 check. If black takes bishop into g7, then white takes the c8 bishop. So black goes king d8 and supports the queen, and the knight and the queen both are attacked. And white could play bishop b6 check, and then black would give queen into b6, and then queen into c8 check, and king into c8, knight into b6 check, king b7, knight into 8. But black plays bishop into g7, and black has 2 pieces for a rook, which means black would win that. So somewhere this entire, I was very skeptical about this move queen h3. I was really wondering if he's making a piece sacrifice without any concrete play. But no, but at the moment I think that black has a good position. White sacrifice, in my opinion, is unsound, because the move knight b6 is met with bishop into e6, and then queen moves and knight go rook a7. You have no useful discovered attack. And I would, in any case, I would have 2 pieces for a rook. So somewhere I think we can say, but white still has 1 hour, black has 47 minutes. No, white has down to 57 seconds.
That's amazing, I believe.
Yes, I mean, it's a typical example of not preparing and making a sacrifice, and nor making a sacrifice without understanding. It's a common problem particularly for Indian youngsters, that they just see, okay, this move queen h5 check, Indian gives advantage.
Yes.
And then they play, and then obviously they are not as strong as Indian.
So this is problem with Indian preparation.
Yes, could have been, because queen h3, another very silly move, because in front of the c8 bishop, and black moves e5, and black is likely to win a piece.
It's discovered attack sort of.
Yes, it's discovered attack and double attack rather.
Double attack.
And yeah, and if he has not analyzed this, and he's taken 38.
So why is not like pushing his light square bishop to like g4? I believe, like just getting it supported once more.
Yeah, but the way it comes, the bishop could be attacked as well, and but that
with h pawn.
Yeah, h pawn is possible. First, black would drive away d4. So black is getting driven up. Bishop g4 is eventually one what it would have to do, and he could survive loss of a piece. And if you play h5, you give knight g7 check, and then take on c8. But meanwhile, after d4, you have been pushed back to bd2. So, and then your opponent plays h5, you play knight g7 check, bishop into g7, bishop into c8, and then your opponent has a pawn more of central pawn mass, but you have a light bishop which your opponent doesn't have. So again, if bishop g4 has to be played, it has to be played now. And since bishop c5 and knight b6 are irritating threats, also in case of bishop g4, one has to take into account some other tactical possibilities, but h5 comes into, okay, that's what the variation we discussed has happened, and okay, but here knight g7 check, he did not play king d8.
Okay,
if king g8 is not played, then white is better, I think so.
Oh yes.
But king d8, obviously that something is missing, then bishop g5 check is controlled, so bishop b6 check probably. But yeah, now I'm not sure if this position is good for black at all, because now the king is in center and white has knight b6 winning some material, the a8 rook is gone, d4, then simply knight into a8, and yeah, confusing. It must have been very interesting tactical here. I'm not very happy with black's position. I must say that black is in real trouble because king in the center, some material is likely to go after rook a7. White could just go knight into d5.
So he figured out the tactic very well, sir, like taking pawn on h7.
I don't know, but here I thought king d8 is possible because bishop e6 check. I just play. Okay, I didn't see bishop e6 check. Queen into b6, queen h4 check was the h. Bishop e7 and queen into e7 check, king into e7, knight into b6.
So all of a sudden,
but
like
still the effect, if g7 knight could be in some trouble, but perhaps a more complex variation reveals. If that is the case, then obviously queen is then e5 is a careless move. So people now, without getting into details, people walk into that.
The computer line basically. They learn computer line.
Maybe queen h3 is given as computer choice, and here one has to analyze e5. So usually they are taking time at that stage. But yeah, if
it took almost 11 minutes.
Yeah, but if you have to allow queen c8 check, then black has no reason to play this position. White is now much better. So somewhere the decision has not been all that accurate. In case of rook a7, you have multiple moves: knight c4, knight into d5. Knight c4 is a small tactic, attacking the queen, attacking the rook. And here I must say that
great, sir.
At least extremely dangerous. So, well, we'll come back to you viewers with different guests and and we'll look at the interesting games within 10 minutes. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Don't go away, and all the interesting games are waiting you. See you in 10 minutes. Then. Bye.
Thank you very much, sir, for your insights. Thank you.
Okay. Now what will you Welcome back to the 9th round of the second international Grandmaster chess tournament at Indore. The previous edition was in 2023. This time we have a field of 131 players from 16 countries. 10 of them are Grandmasters, 2 women Grandmasters, 25 international masters, and more than 50% players are FIDE title holders. And we also had a B category tournament, or the Challengers tournament, where we had players below 2000 rating, and that concluded yesterday. We saw a total number of entries of 289, with several countries, South Korea participating in the Challengers category. Here we have Masters category going on. Last round will be tomorrow, 10th round, and we have a top board game going on between Grandmaster Savchenko of Russia and Indian International Master Ratnakaran. If Ratnakaran wins this game, then he probably gets the Grandmaster norm. Let's look at the game. We're left at this stage, and this is a crucial moment in the game. White has sacrificed a pawn. White has sacrificed a pawn early in the opening, and apparently this is the position both the players were aiming at. White is threatened with the loss of the knight on e6, which means that the only move White can think of is knight g7 check. Moving the knight, attacking the king as well as attacking the c8 bishop. Now if black takes the knight, then white takes the bishop, then black king is under fire. So surely the move that could work for knight g7 check is king d8. Now it is a crucial moment, a very difficult decision perhaps for Ratnakaran to make. If knight g, how to reply knight g7 check with, and king d8 was the move which probably is necessary, leading to complications. Knight g7 check, king d8, and bishop b6 check would have led to extremely complicated position. Queen into b6, and queen h4 check was one of the options, but then g5. It seems that knight g7 check, king d8 is good for black, but surely it's quite interesting to phase, and it's not possible to know what black plays here. Bishop into g7, something I do not approve of. If black wanted to play this, then black should have avoided the entire variation, because now I am very uncomfortable with black's position after knight b6. Okay, then white has several ways to win material. White can win some material with knight into d5, perhaps white can win material with knight c4. The small tactical point of knight c4, and if queen goes to c7, we could take bishop into b6, and queen into c8 is knight d6 check. So knight into d5 was taken, the pawn has been recovered. So what do you have for Ratnakaran at the end of this? White has gained the pawn, black king is in the center, black is ready to castle of course, but white has a logical move to long castle, and white is likely to have a fierce attack in this. Apart from that, there are different moves like bishop g5 at long castle, and the only move white can, only sensible move I can think of is short castle, which doesn't lose immediately, but black must play short castle, and what black has nothing to show for the bad position and the exposed pieces and the weaknesses. White could move the knight and it would attack the queen, so white could be thinking of different knight moves even after castle, and a difficult position for Ratnakaran, who is left only with 21. So we certainly have a complex position. Let's go back to the final position. Let's see if white has one more material. So perhaps error of judgment if black voluntarily played this line, because black plays queen c6, and that means knight c7 check, sacrificing the knight and getting back the knight, and now black is a rook, white is a rook down, but white gets back the rook, white attacks the white bishop, and white also attacks a pawn and castles and queen into pawn. Now we look at it, white gave away a pawn in center, perhaps good sacrifice or bad, we don't know, but now the sort of the effects of this is that black has lost 2 pawns, black has a bad position, white has 2 bishops, and black has weaknesses all over the board. So the one pawn has been recovered and another pawn has been lost. So not a very great position for black, I think. black is in trouble here. Let's move to board 2. Opening with the game, it started with something like Old Indian, but eventually became the King's Indian fianchetto system and standard plan. And bishop into e5, a very committal move. It was perhaps possible to play bishop e3, but now black should have dangerous threats. Black has a comparatively weak pawn d6, but I've seen that even if black loses that pawn, very often black is in a good position. White's only plan could be with f4, and if one can get f5. But f4 now is not possible. King h to rook e3. Okay, interesting move. So he wants to play. So bishop e5, intending a sacrifice. So pawn f4 will be met with a sacrifice. Black will get 3 pawns for the piece after bishop into f4, pawn into f4, knight into f4. White reference from capturing a knight move, the useless knight on b3 coming to d2 and wanting to come to f3. So Nila Shah playing accurate moves against Grandmaster Fedorov of Belarusia, queen e7. So the accuracy level seems to be good in this game, and we could have a very balanced play even here. White is hanging out the weaknesses. Black has active play. Black's d6 is very safe, and we could say that this position is roughly equal. Black offers a pawn. Black is given a pawn, and in return black tries to take the a2 pawn. Now knight into d6 is a possibility. Rook e2. So white plays a simplifying move. I think this is now heading towards a draw. White has some problems on black squares, but white has a strong knight on b5, controlling as many as 8 black squares. So white will not have any problems. We have a roughly equal position here. We move to board 3 then. Top seed Inyan, Grandmaster Inyan from Chennai. Top seed is playing against Gautam Krishna, and it was a very sort of cramped position that Gautam was suffering from after c5. The c5 was a nice move, and rook d1. So as we say, in order to get some pieces activated, black would eventually have to capture on c5. But with the queen on d8, it's extremely risky business, because the queen on d8 would be hanging, knight would be pinned. So black must move the queen and then take dc5, and the only way one can see is to create a square for this queen this way, and now pawn into pawn. And now the queen is willing to move, ready to move from the file knight d3, and now we have finished full check. Bishop f2 was also possibility, knight f2, queen e7, queen c1. Now another option for white could be knight g4, bishop g5, quite a few those castles first. f4 comes into consideration, but c5 pawn is now probably under attack. No, knight into c5 still, knight into c5 would mean moving the knight, and then you could lose a piece. But now black wants to put knight into c5, so bishop g5, exchange of bishops recommended. So we have a position where black has very loose dark squares. Knight g4 comes into consideration, followed by eventually e5, sometimes rook into d7 sacrifice. Knight g4 and rook into d7, e5 is a possibility. Queen e3, safeguarding first. Queen e7, pawn attacked. Knight d3, b4, knight e4, b4 forces knight to a corner. At the same time, it relieves the d3 knight which was guarding the c5 point. So e5. Now perhaps b3 and knight b2 would be one plan. King h1, white wants to break f4, a5, b3, bishop a6, knight c1. Knight see b2, he was afraid of bishop into e2 and knight coming to d4, so he wants to guard it with the knight. And white wants to now play rook d5 and to double in the file. Black would eventually move the d7 knight. It's not easy for white to get knight to c4. Knight b2, knight c4 would jeopardize the safety of c5 pawn. And black is black has reasonable chances here. And if the clock stone is correct, 2 minutes and 45 seconds. It's tough. But white has a pleasant plan of rook d5 and forcing the knight to be moved. King h1 is something I did not understand, but obviously it has some plan. I thought king h1 was not necessary in this pawn structure. Let's go to board 4. A very interesting game between International Master Ameya Audi of Goa and woman Grandmaster and member of Indian team in the Olympiad, Grandmaster PV Nandita. So a tough opening for Nandita, but apparently she seems to have come out of the worst, and black has, but she lost one pawn on h5, and now if white is able to advance the pawns, it could be dangerous. So let's see from where we left. We left at this stage when Nandita played bishop f8 and white played rook c3, and as we felt that after exchanging the rooks, it was possible to take on h5, the attack in the f6. So it's happened exactly this way. Bishop had to come back and g4. White is now, white wants to play g5, but then black has to, so g5, pawn takes pawn f6, so g5 is a possibility here, but e into f5 and g into f6, so rook h1, so white just wants to move the knight to f4 and d3. And c3. Black is b3, perhaps a riskier move. I would have preferred queen e2 or something. b3, queen c7. These last two moves, white set all the pawns on white squares by the white bishop. So objectively not a very accurate thing to do. But knight on d3 controls as many as 8 black squares, and white now wants to play even g5. And after that, white will have enough control on the dark squares. But g5 must not be played when f5 is weak. So queen f4 and g5 looks like a plan as well. Black does not have any compensation for the lost material, but it's not easy for white to improve as well. So let's see a battle that should go in favor of white. Here there's a game which was lost by forfeit. I don't know. Sahil had good chances of making norms, and then the Vietnam Grandmaster Nguyen, he has given a game on forfeit. We don't know the reason, if he's unwell or if he overslept and didn't come in the prescribed permissible time. So here we have Ozumev seems to have simplified the things to a position which is not dangerous. So we had left at this stage when black had played rook knight e5, bishop d7, and bishop g5. I don't know if this makes sense. I thought knight d4 is a more logical move, knight d4 followed by f4, bishop c6, and now knight d4. Okay, he wants to play f4, h6. That's a nice move. So knight into c6, h into g5, and knight into d8, rook into d8. Black gets back the, and bishop into h6, then you lose the e4. I think it's a matter of time. Here, if the preventive knight d4 was played, it was more in the spirit. After this, black gets h6, knight into c6, knight into c6. Okay, it didn't go h into, sorry, the knight into queen is attacked, so obviously he has to knight into c6, then it has to be captured. If he captures the pawn, he loses the h6 point, so h into g5 is not possible anytime the queen was attacked, and bishop into h6. So kingside pawn has been lost, but the leftover bishop, e2 bishop, is not a great attacking piece, and we can expect black to equalize here. The endgames are better for white, but queen h4, threatening queen exchange, b3, c3 looked more logical here, b8, and rook d1, knight d4, so allowing knight d4, king f8, now c3, knight e6, black wants to play knight to c5, so g3, rook is d1 to a awkward square now, because rook into h3 is a pawn sacrifice which must be taken, otherwise the rook goes. But apparently white is playing moves which are simplifying, and there is no really fundamental advantage after black plays rook e8 here. So I don't know if white really wanted to make use of the advantage and the game has ended in a draw without any reasonable action. So there are times when white should have played for a win in my opinion, but I think a safe way out. Let's move to move 4-7. So Ilam Parthi was playing the natural moves, finding out the moves and thinking, and Kashish Jain was blitzing out the moves. So surely a case of one-sided preparation. And let's see how the position is, because every black's move looked like a bad move and yet it was blitzed out. So it is clear that it's a sort of competitor preparation. White is playing all the logical moves. Excellent play. Knight c5 is to stop rook b3. So all logical moves by white. Knight should go to g5 and then black will defend. Black is playing without the h8 rook, but nothing much happening directly. So let's see the significance of this specific pawn structure. Had the white pawn been on h3, white could have played g4 and opened up the king side and planned to penetrate on the king side and also push f5. But now since the black pawn is on h5, it's very difficult for white to open up the game and attack the king side weaknesses. The white knight is not likely to reach important squares. Rooks. c3, interesting move. White is now cleverly trying to exchange the only rook that is active, because white, if the rooks are exchanged and the bishop is tied down to defense of f7, then the h8 rook is useless. White would exchange the rooks and then bring the other rook in the c file. Black would be suffering serious threats. So now rook c3 a nice move, and white wants to. The clock has shown 0-0, which means that somewhere something is wrong. 0-0 is generally played when the game is lost on time, but it's not been lost on time for sure. Here we had Ashwath playing some confusing moves, like trying to play on the king side, but there's no scope on the king side. White is restricted to stopping b5. So bishop f5 and f3, rook d8, knight d5, knight g5, bishop and rook d5. So b5 looks like a possibility. White is going to play e4, c4. So taking advantage of the fact that this d1 rook is hanging and black wants to play bishop d3, winning an exchange. White goes f4. So what happens to bishop d3 here? Bishop d3 attacks the bishop, queen f3, a square has been created, and then black would be needing to guard the bishop anyway. So black thinks bishop d3 will be met with queen f3 here, and c4 perhaps a more ambitious move than what the position demands. So f4, still I think bishop could move to, if bishop moves to d6, there is e4, so bishop d3 force queen f3, and white has a plan now of f4 and e5. With the d5 bishop would be weak. I think white is now going to get back this. Rook d2 was a move that was played out of compulsion, and now white is probably going to play rook d1 back, or after rook d1 back after e4. Black is thinking, I think, position Glick has some threats, and Ashwath's position is not really indefensible. It looks roughly equal. Here we have game between Dipan Chakravarti, who was leading the tournament for quite some time, and now he's playing against Saurabh Anand, former under 9 and under 19 Indian champion from Bihar, Dipanjan Chakravarti, a strong grandmaster from Chennai. A simple ending has been reached, but black's bishops are really in awkward position. The bishop on e3 keeps the a2 tied down, the bishop on f3 keeps the c8 bishop tied down as in order to support that. And when you have pieces supporting pawns, is the unfortunate part. So a pin threatened, bishop d7, one pawn given, but he is going to get back the pawn probably. h3, back rank mate avoided, bishop c6. So I think black has survived the worst, but the pin along the e-line can be done. The bishop has no useful square, and that's a big problem. So bishop f6, rooks get exchanged, rook d8, g3. So white just I think safeguards king g2 and b3 and then tries to move the rook to a4 or try to take on a7. So rook d5 immediately attacking the bishop. If b4 is played, then black would even have the chance of playing a5 and exchanging a pawn. So the bishop must move, and bishop has no useful move. Bishop rook c2 can be met with bishop into b2, but then you have bishop into a7 and then bishop d4. A rook ending a pawn down, but a forced draw. So I think black should be able to equalize in this. Black may have to play accurately. And let's go back to 10th board. The game has ended in a draw. Saptarshi Roy Chaudhary had found correct tactical defenses in a position where there is a pawn up, but with the shaky piece position. And as we can see, rook c4, the only move we discussed, and that was adequate. And we felt that bishop into c5 is necessary, and rook into c5 and rook into d4, and the game has taken place the same way. White playing the unambitious move, but it's probably compulsory. If there's one has to try, then queen c2, a very awkward move had to be played. So also tactical bishop f3 was a possibility. Maybe a bishop f3 would have been a better move, and rook into d1, bishop into e4, but then there is rook d2. So I think they play a simple game. Bishop is given and there's a draw by perpetual check. Both the players decided to play it safe today, and we go to the next board, where Tabaz arrived from Iran playing with Nitin Babu, and Nitin Babu had a tough position where left at this stage, and e6, knight b5, it is on queen a3. a6, and knight comes back, and white had played an unnecessary simplifying move b4, and then it looked that black would be fine, and again white exchanges all the pawns, queen c4, that's the idea, okay. So white wants to take other pawn rather than a c5 pawn. I missed this move completely. c5 was played not to win the c5 back, but it was played to win either e6 or a6 pawn, and queen c8 is a possibility, and then perhaps queen into c5, bishop into f3. And black wants to hang on to the material, queen d6, queen b6, knight a4, queen b5. So pawn gone. Tactical possibility now, so knight sacrifice, if queen into a4, bishop d5. The f7 knight cannot be guided. King g7, queen into knight, king h6. G2. Black king will have problems, I think. e3 and g4 is one option. Also, queen f8 check always forces the knight to go to g7. And here, the normal trap was queen f8 check, knight g7, queen into f6, queen d1 check, winning the d5 bishop. So, king is no longer in check. White wants to play queen f8 check, knight g7, queen into f6. So guarded, e3, queen c3, g4. That's been achieved, and the king is in some trouble. Maybe even h4. Yes, h4. No threat at the moment, but if queen moves, then g5 check would win a piece. So queen must remain on the diagonal. Bishop c4 can be tried. f4 is a principled move, but I think it doesn't work. f4, is it really? It's working. f4. knight pawn g5 check, and king h5, and bishop f3 check, or take preliminary exchange for bishop f3 check, king into h4, and queen into g7, that's queen b2 check. f4 queen into e3, g5 check, take king h5, that's already taking the g7 would be impossible. Yeah, f4 queen e3, g5 check, take or direct king h5, bishop f3 check, king h4. Suddenly black has a lot of threats, and f4 is not winning, which means that but somehow this position doesn't seem to be good for sure, and white is going to get some advantage. White can go for some slower plan as well, but where to keep the king, because f4 in g5 is a plan. The king should not be exposed to check soon, and there's no such square, so perhaps black can get away with this. However, black is a very difficult position for sure. And the next board we have Vyani Dekunda playing against Aditya Krishna. We had left the game at this stage, and white played c4. So the weak pawn has been attacked, and then knight e4, bishop b2, e5 pawn has been attacked, the exchange rather, eventually. And bishop d5, so now e5 is guarded, and e4 is also guarded. So b5. Only one move to save the piece. And then knight b4 attacking the bishop. Knight to c5. Everything guarded, surprisingly. Knight into d5 going into d6. And nothing is going immediately. Bishop a3 threatens bishop e4. f5. And bishop e4, pawn into e4, knight on c5 is safe, and pawn structure is bad, and perhaps white can just exchange the queens by moving the knight. So c4 pawn is queen d4. White cannot take, so white will take queen c2 followed by rook d1 apparently. b2. So rook d1. Black plans to play knight d3. So pawn recovered. A very good advantage to white. White did not take queen into e4 here. So board 13. On board 13 we have Wits playing against Raja Nirmanan. A Queen's Indian attack which was not played very successfully. Black had expanded on the queen side. Needs to be seen if the pawn on c4 is safe, because if it's safe, then white would be worse. So only one open file, and black has already doubled. King side threats don't seem to be serious. Black can even drive away these pieces with h5 followed by g6. And the combination like knight into e4. Queen into e4, d2 piece for piece, e4 pawn gone. b2 under attack also. e3 under attack. So knight into e3, queen into b2, rook f1. Quite a few pawns have been lost then. Maybe queen into b2, rook a b1, but queen into c3. Black seems to be doing good here suddenly because of this combination. Yeah, let us have a look at knight into e3, queen into b2. Black has won a pawn and there are no direct threats. Rook b1, queen into c3, bishop into e6, f into e6, rook into b7. But black would have some counterplay in this. Yes. No, it's black does not have any advantage. As mistaken, I thought after knight into e3, it's risky to take on b2. So will not be able to judge the position randomly. It leaves knight into e3, queen b2, rook b1, queen c3, bishop into e6, pawn into e6, rook into b7, knight d4. No, so yeah, but yes, we have to look at the queen on c3. Yeah, knight d4 also weakens the e5 point. So queen into b2 could be risky after knight into e3. And if it is not really possible to take queen into 2, white could be better. If queen into b2 can be played, black could be better. The exact analysis of queen into b2 will decide. And now here we have Grandmaster Teterev. Teterev is also from Belarusia. The proper King defense game. Got into Maruzivine, and now we have position opening up. So I think pawn for pawn exchange, knight will use away the bishop, and black should solve the problem of the bishop. Perhaps bishop e6 is met with knight c7, bishop into so e5. b3, king h1, and now knight d6. Black has some problem. Black is opening up the game. But b7 pawn is weakened. The bishop could be susceptible to attack. This is in front of the rook. Knight into b7 can threaten knight c5, and I think white is preferable here. We go to board 15. We have Andhra Pradesh player Matta Vinay Kumar, who is playing for Union Bank of India, playing against Liange Dilshan of Sri Lanka. We had left the game at this stage where black had played some strange moves, but the knight on d4 looked quite solid. f4, not necessarily a advisable move, but now we see why the pawn came to f4 is a big question. Black goes knight f5, and bishop e4 was not tried. Okay, queen b6 check. So white has to guard the g4 square, while black gives rook e6. Okay, strong pawn, and no. e6 is strong or weak, because if they guarded with queen d5, black can play queen e3 or something, and then the pawn could be lost anyway. So the overextended pawn could get exchanged with the queen d5, threatening a discovered check. Queen c5 looks logical, for which white wants to play, I think, this bishop g2. So if the e6 pawn survives, then it's going to be a tough position for black. But anytime bishop comes to g2, there is knight g4 check. So even here, queen c5 and such moves come into consideration. Let's look at the top board again before we have a 5 minutes break. Yeah, we had left this stage queen into b4, and black was rook d1. White is simply a pawn up without the white is a a4. Oh, that's a very confusing move. Hmm. H4, H5 look like a logical plan. A4 and he wants to. Okay. Confusing move. It wants to, if I wants to bishop d6, then queen b4 is directly possible. a5 is not possible. So what could be the purpose of this move? Provoke a5 is black is not going to do. But still a difficult position for Nagar for sure, and a very inconsistent play by white and black as well. So looked like the preparation wasn't adequate and white has still got into an advantageous position. I'll see you in 5 minutes time, then we'll have a 5 minutes break. Don't leave, we'll be here. So I'll join you in 5 minutes time from now. गेस्ट आए थे
सर
गेस्ट आए थे
नहीं है
सुनील पवार आने की बात हो रही थी
अच्छा बोलिए
हाँ उनका तो मैं उनको भेज देता हूँ
सर अपडेट दे दीजिए एक बार तो
हाँ फिर
आईफोन लगा दे
हाँ ऐसे कुछ Welcome back to the ninth round of the second Indore International Grandmaster Chess Tournament. At the end of the eighth round, we had four players with 6.5 points on top two boards where the battles, and we had six players with 6 points each following the leaders. So it's likely that the champion emerges from the top five boards. It's two boards with 6.5 point players playing against each other, and three boards next to that with 6 points each. The tournament has attracted 131 participants from 16 countries, including 4 continents, and we have 10 grandmasters, 2 women grandmasters, and 25 international masters have joined the field. It's more than 50% players are title holders of FIDE. They are the degree holders of FIDE, and the prize money of 21 lakhs has been given to the Masters event, and the Candidate Challengers event, which ended yesterday, had a prize money of 14 lakhs. The tournament is being conducted at the beautiful campus of IPS Academy, Indore, and the tournament is sponsored by Indore West Management, Red Cross Society, Path Foundation, Navin Florin, Goyal Group, HDFC Bank, Kirloskar Brothers, Glib Buildcon, and Mega Developer. So the last round will be tomorrow in the morning at 10 o'clock. We'll be streaming for the last round. But let's come to the most exciting penultimate round with 6 players on 6 points and 4 players on 6.5 points. So this is the top board. We have Grandmaster Boris Savchenko of Russia playing against Ratnakaran, and Ratnakaran had made some very risky moves in the opening, and we had left at this stage at A4 was a very confusing move, but seems to be alright. White has a completely dominating position. It's not a question of just one pawn. The black's E pawn actually hinders development of black's pieces, and the white has queenside pawns. 2 connected passed pawns will come soon. Black wants to penetrate queen A2. White doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for white if queen A2 is played. White would simply play a nice option. White would just continue with the plan of attacking. So bishop F8 and G4. White just ignores the possibility of queen A2 because it doesn't really threaten anything. So queen C7, black comes back to C7. Black has nothing to do, and C5. Black is unable to develop the pieces successfully. White is targeting the H7 point. Now queen F5, where the threat is now attacking the knight, and the knight, if knight goes back, then obviously white could replace place the bishop on E4 apart from any other move. Knight C5, an attempt to activate the knight and attack the queen side. King B1, offering the pawn. If black takes knight into A4, white wins with rook D7. So H6, a waiting move, and finally bishop into C5, opposite colored bishops, but black has lost yet another pawn, 2 pawns down. So black decides to play an endgame, hoping for a fortress by due to opposite colored bishop, but it's impossible to block these 3 pawns, and the black passed pawn can be blockaded just simply with a move bishop E2. Rook F1, an unnecessary move. Bishop E2 looked simply winning, and bishop E2 and B5 was called for, but rook F1 absolutely unnecessary move. And now A6, and had the rook been on D1, I think it was very simple to advance the pawns. Just put the bishop on E2 and advance the queen side pawn. The purpose of rook F1, of course, is to prevent the bishop from getting back to the pawn. So white pawns could queen now instead of winning a bishop. That's all. Rook D1 here looked very strong, preventing the advance of the the king from going to block the pawns. So here black gets a chance to block the pawns by king, but it's of no use because 3 connected passed pawn. White simply wants to play C5 and rook D1 and rook D6, and then B5 and B6. The pawns are going to queen. The black pawn makes no sense. Black was better without the pawn, but well, now probably a losing position for Ratnakaran, which means Savchenko goes to 7.5 points, is certain to be a leader and perhaps sole leader, depending on the result of the second game. If this game on the second board between Nilasha and Fedorov is resulting, then the winner becomes a joint leader along with Savchenko. And let's go back to the stage where we had left the game. The position was roughly equal most of the time. And white played queen e2. Black got a chance to play bishop f5 due to the hanging nature of the white queen. White queen is on e2 is hanging, so black plays bishop f5, attacking the pawn. The pawn has been taken, pawn has been guarded, and pawn has been taken. So one pawn has been lost by white. So queen comes to c2. Surely white cannot play the ending, so white decides to play, give up another pawn which has been taken, and now comes knight into pawn. So how does he guard the knight if black moves knight to h5? He intends to play rook e8 check. Then if knight moves in rook e8 check, bishop f8, queen h6 with some threats. So bishop e6, preventing the capture of the bishop, and now threatening knight h5, winning with d6 pawn. Knight could be in trouble. Knight e4, exchange of knights has been offered, and rook must take it because the c4 pawn was hanging. A pawn down without much compensation. h6 stopping the knight moves, and black is now ready to create a pass pawn on the queen's side. So king h2. It would have been very awkward for white to reply to queen c2 as well, attacking f2. Queen h4, king h7, unnecessary move encouraging knight g5 check. King comes back, queen f4, and now queen c2 should be a very strong move. Queen c2, attacking f2, and white is in extremely difficult position here. So probably Fedorov will join Savchenko to the lead after this round with 7.5 points, because white has no compensation for the lost pawn. The f2 pawn has been attacked, and if he has to come back king g1, there comes rook d1 check. So white moves knight here. Knight has no good square, so knight should come to e5, and black can actually capture bishop into e5 itself, or move the rook to d2. I think black has a winning position here, and we can hope for a miracle only if black is left with little time. As we see, the time shown is 0.00 and 6.14, which means that there's something wrong with the time, because 0.00 occurs only when some player is lost, and the game is going on, so the clock is wrong. We'll have the exact position soon. Now we go to the third, fourth, and fifth boards where players are playing on 6 points each, just half a point behind the leaders, and hoping to catch with them. Someone wins today, then continues to be half a point behind the leaders, which means that there is a chance of catching up with the leaders in the last round. So here we had a different type of King's Indian defense, and black was all cramped. And let's see how black reeled out of this passive position. It seems that black has made significant improvement from a position where he had no pieces to move. As after this e5, black could get a knight on d4, and suddenly black's position looks playable. So bishop a6, I don't know if knight d4 was to be tried, but obviously it has to be planned, because knight d4 could run into knight into e5, and the d4 knight is weak. So preparing that with knight f8 looked like a logical move, knight f8, and then putting the knight to e6. But bishop a6, knight, and bishop into e2. The white knight has got to a good square where the e2 point is being covered. Black has slight weakness, but white knight should be on c4 and not a4, rook c1. So I think something has seriously gone wrong, because white has given up the only open file. So obviously there is nothing happening, and white is making some vague attempts of a kingside attack. Let's see how it works. h5, queen e3. So white wants to go queen g5, queen e6, queen g5, knight h7, offering the pawn. If knight into pawn check, the king moves to h8, and white's queen as well as knight are attacked. So queen comes back and black comes back. Black is playing for a draw. So white now challenges something has already gone wrong because black has really controlled the only file, and the white knights are aiming at c4, but the blockade on c6. The knight on c6 guards the a5 pawn. It's very difficult for white to guard to attack a5 pawn twice or e5 pawn twice. So not going to be easy. Black is improving compared to white, a very systematic player. Probably a queen exchange offered, queen into queen 4. I think black is preferable here because of the activity of pieces. White has created a good fortress by not allowing the black rook to enter, but black could have a good knight at f4, full knight at f4. Black plays ambitiously. Black is now going to create a pass pawn. I don't know if knight f4 was an accurate move here before f5, but because now the knight is a bit badly placed, knight goes to f6 now and is sacrificing a pawn. So pawn into pawn, rook h8, black has strong initiative, so white goes here. White is intending to simplify the positions, but c5 pawn attacked. White is into complete defense, and let's see if black is able to improve. Black cannot move the king because of knight e3 coming, and then rook f5 pawn would be hanging, so rook e2 check would be forced. I think it's clear that white is now playing for a draw, and black just suggests a draw by playing rook d. Look at the moves: rook d5 attacking the pawn, knight a4, and now rook d8. And the white is it possible to try rook d3 or something, but he goes rook d8 just to show that he is not really playing to win. And if white plays knight b2, is agreeable to a draw. So a draw looks like a logical result. Oh, they've made suddenly a few moves have appeared, and great. Black has actually white has taken a decision of not playing for a draw here. Rook h1 no, here it's okay. It's white is simply black wants to win here. I think there's a chance Gautam had given to Inyan to repeat the position and get a draw, but now Gautam is not wanting to make a draw. A good move by Inyan, it will clarify the things. Now it needs to be seen which passed pawn is stronger, and I tend to prefer black here because black king on e6 cannot be driven away easily. King e6 played, and now the knight could join. Knight has a very nice square, central square at d5, and then if black g5, g4 pawn survives, knight h5 is also possible. If the g4 pawn survives, then black is going to have a lot of initiative. Knight d7, he wants to win the e5 pawn. Knight b2. So even now knight into e5 is possible. Knight into c5, pawn taken free. King g3 is looking forward to getting it back, but a killer, I think, rook d4 and knight e4 check looks like a logical move. The e5 pawn is also free, and knight e4 check. If white takes the pawn, then the knight c3 check is the simplest way, taking the e2 pawn, and we could have different moves as well for king into pawn. Knight king into g4, and okay. So pawn has been given. I don't know if black really calculated what to do after that, because black offered a pawn, and now black has started thinking, so it's a bit confusing. Knight c3 check is one option where you really take the a2 pawn. I don't know how useful it is because of rook a1 coming and taking the a5 pawn, and then you take the e5 pawn. As the pawns are reduced, white's chances of making a draw increase. So I don't see the need to really give the g4 pawn. Knight d7 looked like a very good move. Knight d7 planning to take on e5. It looks quite strong. Knight e4 check, king into pawn. If there is a mating attack possible, only then this sacrifice makes sense. And now black is thinking, so perhaps black hasn't found a win for the, and it's, I don't know why black played knight e4 check here. If he has not planned the next move, it's a bit confusing, but that's what it happens. And we see Gautam still has a chance of winning this game. But now that g4 pawn is lost, draw seems likely. The fifth board where players have got 6 points, just half a point behind the leaders. Nandita was in a tough position, and let's see how the position is. 1 pawn lost in the opening, but some compensation. Yeah, we left at this stage when black was a solid pawn up, and the logical plan for white is to play g5, which becomes very difficult because of e into f5. Bishop h6 to provoke g5, g5, pawn into pawn, and bishop g7, a direct bishop g7, it would have created some threats. So a pawn offered. So queen into f6 opens up the bishop, and it could be dangerous. Black queen penetrates with queen b6, so rook d1, bishop f8 guarding the d pawn, h5 safeguarded, e5, and now if white exchanges the bishops, light colored bishops, black can resign, but the exchange is not likely with that bishop. So eventually it will have to be a exchange with the knight, and then we have chances of a draw. White sacrifices a pawn. Rook into d6 would run into rook into d6. Yeah, okay, king is on b1, so rook into is not possible because bishop e4 check. c5 sacrifice, pawn into pawn, knight into c6 check. Okay, strange sacrifice. Rook d8 check, yeah, king c7, and queen d3. Bishop e3 closing down. The sacrifice is not effective because of this nice move, bishop e3, and Nandita found it. The bishop cannot be taken because the rook is hanging, and the bishop could go to d4, creating serious threats against white pieces. So white king. So white has now to be careful, and if black plays b5, probably queen d5 will be compulsory. Queen d7, so black wants to guard. Oh, the pawn was attacked, so queen d7 now intends b5. So black doesn't really, white doesn't wait for this, and bishop e3, the pawn has been stopped, and bishop h6 driving away the rook, e4. So pawn sacrifice to exchange the rooks, but after rook exchange, d6 check, and king into d6, bishop into a5. The h pawn is of no use, but the king side weakness is useful. So rook h8, a nice move, and rook into g4, and now bishop is attacked. Rook into h6, rook into e4, rook into f6, rook h4, h6. This is now black has made some very serious committal moves, and king d8 looks forced here, and white plays d6, and black could run short of moves, and after d6, black runs short of moves. White may take rook into f7 at adequate moment, or here even rook into f7 and rook into h6, rook into b7. One is 2 pawns up and could lose only one of them. But so I think the serious oversight perhaps at this stage giving away the e4 pawn, but seems that there's too much weakness in the b7 pawn was weak, d6 check was coming. So perhaps error of judgment, or rather a forced sequence of move because she was a pawn down. And I think white is contemplating or rook into f7. It's a more forcing variation. So if it can be played, it will be played. Rook into f7, rook h6, rook into b7. And after losing one of these 2 pawns, because it's clear that black can win the f pawn with rook f6, or black can win the d pawn with rook d6. So after losing that pawn, if the position is winning for white, it seems so, white can just play king c3 then, and black pawns are too weak to get a draw. So here we can see on board 4, Inyan we can expect Inyan to go to round 7 points and just half a point behind the leaders. Let's go back to the top boards which now matter. Savchenko has won. Yeah, we're already in the last closing part of it, and the b pawn just advances. And he has actually given up the pawn. So rook into pawn check and the king moves, and then the a pawn simply queens. So okay, so one player already on 7.5 point. Second board, and Fedorov has lost back the Pomborgo. He has won an exchange. Black, yeah, as the things stand, knight e5 we're thinking of, and rook d2. This is exactly what we thought. Knight e5, rook d2 would be dangerous. And knight g4, and now rook e2, planning to exchange the. That's rook into e6. That's I think a bad. I mean, it's now a bad position. Rook into e6. Bishop d5, that's what he plans. So f into e6, a risky move, but and queen b at check. Yeah, rook into, there's a chance of a fortress here. King at 7 and queen into b7 threatens a rapid mate. Knight f6 check, and queen goes to the 8th rank and mate. So queen f5 only move. And now black's pieces are a bit cramped. White has possibility of improving the position. King will come to g2, and then white will start regrouping the knight. Black may not be able to break through. It looks like a fortress because of the safety of white positions. White may even play h4. Black may play h5 here to prevent knight g4. But at this moment, it becomes suddenly becomes clear that unless the black bishop attacks the white knight, there is no winning plan possible. So, without losing any material, black must get bishop d4. So, probably putting the queen at e8, and then king on g8 and bishop d4 looks like the only plan. But it's with the exposed king and the weak g6, I think Fedorov has messed up. Perhaps Nilesh has played very well, but we have chances of a draw here. In this game, Inyan, well, they haven't moved, so after king into g4, perhaps Gautam has lost the advantage. Let's move to board 4, and Nandita was in the same position, and then we go to 5th board where Sahil had lost by 4 feet the walkover, and then Sham Nikhil the game and didn't draw. Virtually, it means that the prizes, the top prizes in the trophies are only for the players who are playing on the top 5 boards now. So let's have a look at the top 5 boards, and then we'll end the day, we'll end the session. So Savchenko leads by defeating Ratnakaran, and then Nilasha is fighting a interesting battle, exchange down, but a lot of compensation against the other leader, Fedorov. So we could have sole leader, and if this game ends in a draw, and the 6 players fighting on the next 3 boards with 6 points. Inyan's game has stopped, but it looks like a draw, and Ame Audi is likely to win against Nandita, which means she will go to next score 7 points, and then yeah, so that is where we are. And board 5 has won by forfeit. So Nguyen has got a free point against Sahil Day, and he has gone to 7 points. So we have now, tomorrow we'll have 7.5 point players and 7 point players playing with each other and decide the top honors of the tournament, top medals. So we'll resume our session, we'll resume our commentary tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the morning. The last round is at 10 a.m. and we are watching the 9th round of the second Indore International Grandmaster Chess Tournament 2024, sponsored by Indore West Management, Red Cross Society, Path Foundation, Naveen Florin, Goel Group, HDFC Bank, Dilip Buildcon, Kirloskar Brothers and Mega Developers. The tournament has attracted 131 participants from 16 countries, and it has a field of 10 Grandmasters, 2 women Grandmasters, 25 International Masters, and 4 continents, North America, South America, Asia and Africa are being represented. So truly international event, and let's see how the event goes tomorrow. The most important round, the final round, last round will be played at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So do join me at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Good day, bye.